Thank you for listening to the Agile Standup, the show where we talk about all things related to Agile, Scrum, and Kanban, leaving no subject, professional, unprofessional, awesome, insensitive, or otherwise, untouched. Today, we are going to discuss common retrospective items, what to do after your team has finished their retro, and how the team can hold itself accountable for what they retroed.
Retroed?
That's not right.
Retroed?
Well,
Yeah, I guess you could say retro.
They know what they mean. It's just the intro.
No, you know what you mean. I know what you mean, but does our audience know what retroed is? I guess so, right?
Yeah. Well,
is that a word?
It's just the intro.
Okay.
It is now.
It is now.
And
it's coined by John. Retroed.
Right. And go. Okay, so common retrospective items. So, Christine, what have you seen?
Well, common retrospective items. There's a variety, right? It differs between different teams. Some of the items are sometimes you have blockers on other teams, right? So sometimes it's how to improve the communication across teams. Other times it can be something like how do we make sure that we're grooming our backlog and we have future sprints planned. Sometimes it can be how do we improve our processes on the team, whether it be building up automation. There's a variety of different things that come out of retrospective items. Some of them are common across teams, and other times you have completely different random items that come out of retrospectives. Yeah, but I think one of the things when you're retroing, I think it's important to include everybody that's on the team, right? You have your development team, you have your product owner, and you have your scrum master. I think that those are really good discussions, and I think sometimes they're hard discussions. You're going to have good retros where it's all gravy and positive feedback, but then you're going to have these retrospectives where the team really finds areas that they need to improve on. And sometimes it's even relationships, improving relationships within the team.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, I mean, one thing that I found that helps out a lot with improving those relationships is just kind of getting to know each other and spending a lot of time together, definitely in meetings. I know that that's one of the things that can happen. You become kind of some type
Wait,
type
did
of
you just
meeting
say
coma.
meetings? Did you just say meetings?
I know.
There's ceremonies.
Oh, excuse me. You're right.
Ceremonies.
What's
the matter with you? Are you a scrum master?
This is official now. I know. I think so. That's
No,
what I got paid
John is
for.
a good scrum master. He had a little hiccup right there.
Yeah. Right. There you
Ceremonies.
go. There you go. Ceremonies. Excuse me.
Okay.
Scrum ceremonies.
Yes, scrum ceremonies.
Very official. All right. Sounds good. Well, yeah. So I guess on my team for some common retro items, what I've seen is, and not always it goes with the team. Sometimes it's higher outside of the teams. Definitely, I have one very mature team, and I have one team that's barely in the kind of coming together, the forming stages. And the differences are there. I mean, the team that's in the forming stages, there are definitely things that we can take on within the team. But with the more mature team, I've noticed that a lot of the retro items that come out of that are not necessarily what's going on in the team because they're already pretty good, cohesive together. Mm-hmm. It's outside of the team where there's a lot of dependencies on either other teams, a lot of issues working with those dependencies, working them out that they've had experience in the past. Also, sometimes upper management and even higher at the executive level for decisions that are made, maybe made too late. Maybe they put some extra stress on the team. And that's tough for a scrum master to be able to kind of hear that because it's like you want to protect your team, you want to take care of them. But when they're like, oh, hey, well, and depending on how close you are to your CEO, sometimes it's like, oh, well, the CEO made this decision and went this direction and didn't do that. And that can get tough because you're kind of put in the spot there. You want to protect your team, but the person that's so high and so out there, do you have any control? Would you even have their court to get them to understand your plight?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important for the scrum master to get those items out of the retrospective and take action on those.
That's like a whole other episode.
Yeah, but I mean, no, I mean, it's the truth. So there's so many revealing things that happen in the retrospective that sometimes as a scrum master, it does become where they're basically calling you or your help or the PO's help to shield them.
Right.
And so you have to take those items and you have to work to shield the team from those external factors. And it could be a variety of things, right? So the team could need new technologies that they're asking for because maybe what they have isn't working for them anymore. Mm-hmm. It could be, please let leadership understand that we are working toward meeting goals, deadlines, or things on the roadmap. And so instead of coming directly to the team, they want to have a way to radiate that information out, right? So that they're not getting disrupted. Or it's, hey, we're super busy on this team, and teams are coming at us with so many questions, and it's hard for us to focus. Like it's a variety of things that come out of retrospectives. But I have to say, it is my favorite ceremony of all.
Yeah, no, I would totally agree with that. It's like a nice cap at the end, because I'm sure you do the same as I do, but we always have the retro at the end of our sprint review. Kind of typically what we like to do is flow right into it. So we're all in the same room together, virtual or physical, and then we just kind of say, all right, thank you everybody for attending the sprint review. We're going to now head into our retro. Appreciate your attendance. And I always kind of end it with, we'll see you next sprint review, because a lot of the audience doesn't attend everything but that sprint review. So they just see us once every 1, 2, 3 weeks, or however often your cadences. But then when we go into that retro, everybody's ready at that point, and we're fired up. So it's kind of a nice way to cap the end and kind of like discuss and take a breather. And it's a really relaxing thing. So I would agree. It's definitely one of my favorites. I think I'm still a huge backlog refinement fan though myself. I think that's probably my favorite.
So what does that have to do with retro?
Yeah, but okay. Well, your favorite was retro. Mine was backlog refinement.
Oh, gotcha. The ceremony. You're talking about the ceremony.
That's the ceremony. The ceremony.
Wow. Not the meeting.
Okay. Right, not the meeting. The ceremony. Thank you, Christine.
No. I'm kidding. So, I think that the retrospective is the perfect opportunity to reflect on how a sprint has gone.
Right.
And I normally also try to conduct quarterly retrospectives with my teams to just look at the entire quarter and how they did.
Interesting.
And what we were able to achieve, what we couldn't achieve, why we were able to achieve something. So we want to keep that same flow going.
That's a pretty good tip.
Why we didn't achieve something, so that going into the next quarter, if it was something that we underestimated, we go back and we try to work through that so that we get, you're never going to have that perfect estimation in order to deliver, right? But you try to get close enough, and you try to set kind of those sprint goals. And so I definitely love the sprint retrospective as well as the retrospectives at the end of the quarter.
And I like that. In fact, that's the first time that I'm hearing that, and that's a really good idea. I think I'm going to start that with my teams coming up. But
yes,
there you go. You've converted me. But on that note, Christine, so we've retroed. Now what? What are the next steps?
You know what's so funny?
Yeah. Do you have some secret sauce, Christine?
You actually, I do.
You do?
No, what's really funny though is you do get that a lot. So you have retro with the teams, and the teams will say, okay, so we just got out of retro. What are we going to do with these items, right? Because oftentimes you hear that people retro, but nothing changes.
Right.
So it becomes, all right, so how does a team hold itself accountable? So some of the techniques that I use is we have our items that we need to, that went really well, right? So that's what worked well for us that we want to keep doing. We have our items that we need to improve on. And so we go through the list of items, we consolidate whatever's common with those items. So if 2 people wrote up something that's very similar, we'll consolidate those, right? And then what I like to do is with my teams, I like to have them vote on the items that they want to talk about and look to improving on.
So let's explore that real quick, because how do you deal with that? Because I definitely, my teams are very distributed, and I'm sure the majority of us and our audience are probably having to deal with the same thing. So what type of, conveyance or software or methods do you use in order to capture the voting accurately without influencing the other voters on the phone? Is there any type of software that you use?
So there's a variety of software. There's like a GitHub that has one that's a fun retrospective. And I think you talked about...
I'm a huge fan of Scatterspoke. That's for sure. Yeah, I do like Scatterspoke. We use it quite a bit. It's good. It's easy to use. Really, it requires, outside of the sign-up thing, it requires no instruction. So that's my favorite part. And it's anonymous. So it really allows a team to talk about items without taking ownership of them, as far as, hey, I put this on.
It doesn't name stamp.
Yeah, right. Yeah. It doesn't name stamp.
Which is something that I like. Which is along the lines of why we use some of the tools that we use. And there's a variety of people. You can actually go out there and Google retrospectives. Like, it started out where you could only do it by stickies or you had to get creative in PowerPoint. Yeah. But, there's a lot of online tools. So if you just Google Agile Retrospective online tools, you'll come up with a ton of stuff. But These tools offer the ability for your team to vote on the top things that they want to discuss and look to improve. So, one of the things that I do with my team is I'll say, hey, go ahead and vote. We will talk about and you can sort by like the items that got the highest votes. We talk about those and we try and select 2 to 3 items that we can actually commit to improving in the next sprint. So what I usually do is once we finish the sprint, we vote on those items. I will go ahead and create tasks, and we use Jira. I will create tasks in Jira, make them like a user story task, and we will try and commit to them in a sprint. So, at the end of the sprint, we'll look back and we'll say, wow, did we talked about this in retro, we created a task for it. Did we achieve this, right?
Do you story point those? Do you like go over
No,
that?
I don't story point those.
Good.
Unless it's something where somebody has to do some coding for, or
a retro item that requires coding?
yeah, I mean, if it's
Are they making a suggestion box? What are they
if it's an improvement to something, but I guess that would be a user story. But yeah, no, for the most part, you don't story point those. Are just tasks, and sometimes it's a scrum master who has to take those tasks on, or it's a team member that makes that improvement.
I'm excited about that because I'm learning so much here. Definitely the quarterly retros and this method that you're saying, I think is going to be very effective because it does, and I don't mean to prompt you or anything, but it does kind of, to me, it would make it visible on a daily basis. It kind of keeps it in you, kind of like the telltale heart. Like it's like, beating all the time, every time during your daily scrum, you're just like, boom, 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 it's there. So it really brings visibility.
And there's actually another one that I've done that's really interesting, but you can do it every 6 months, and it's with your organization, where you take your product management team and you take your devs and you take the entire teams
and they
you
slug
retro.
It out.
Yeah.
Right.
But you retro and you look back at what went really well for these teams where they collaborated over the last 6 months and what hasn't gone well, and how do they want to improve the relationship between product and the engineering side, which those retros have been interesting in the past, but they've been really helpful to improving the relationship, because at the end of the day, I don't feel like it should be a separate team. We're all, developing software, or, if you work in marketing, we're all trying to work together, and we all have to find ways to work better. And so these retrospectives, that's what they offer. They offer the opportunity to reflect and make the changes that you need to make for it to get better.
And on that, thank you for playing along with us today on the Agile Stand-Up. Today, we discuss common retrospective items, what to do after your team has finished their retro, and how the team can hold itself accountable for what they retroed. Is that still right?
Yeah. So, John, let me ask you something. Should we retro about our retro items, or should we retro about this retro discussion?
I think so. I think we also need to do a quarterly retro. Because of what I just learned,
there's
right?
always room for improvement in our podcast.
So we're going to quarterly retro our retros, and we're going to talk specifically about our retro episode.
What if we retro with our audience?
Whoa!
I think that would be pretty
coming
cool.
soon.
Yes,
Audience retro. Now that'd be pretty neat. I think Christine has a good idea.
Yeah,
there.
I think so too.
I think we're going to do that.
And John's going to facilitate it.
All right. Thanks so much. Bye.
All right.
Bye, team.